All
Oh,
right.
perfect. So I sent around the framework and got some helpful ideas and some thoughtful suggestions on what to incorporate. So I really appreciate everyone's feedback and thoughts on that. I think, I think everybody has the most updated version. I can send that around again if need be, but there were a few changes and then one question that we wanted to briefly mention that I think maybe Rachel had brought to my attention is which fellows are included in the project. And from what, I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or on that. My thought was that it was fellows who are either launched or currently going through like a hiring process of some sort. But I didn't know if anyone else had an opinion on whether, yeah, Deborah.
Yeah, it's only launched fellows or those who are about to who are well in the launch phase.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So yeah. So it would be Rachel, it would not be you at this point, but it would be Kelly because she's well into the launch phase. Okay. And it would not be, who else is there? No, and none of the three new fellows.
None of the three new ones, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Is
All
there
right.
a certain point in time that, oh, John, go ahead. I was going to ask, is there a certain point in time, like in the calendar year, or is it more dependent on each fellow as to when they enter this serious looking phase? Okay.
Yeah, each fellow is different
Okay.
based on their path. So that would not be, that's one of those at the right time. Now, I
Okay.
do think that all fellows who aren't part of this, there'll be another project that fellows can work on. Okay, but
Right.
for this one, we're going on mining the experience so that it can be helpful for those who internally will be entering the launch phase and for hiring places across the land who would benefit from good, cool ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I will make that edit. And then, I mean, I'm not going to go detail by detail because you have the framework. It's not necessary for me to do so. But I don't know if there were any other comments or thoughts about it, questions about it, anything like that.
I want clarity in my brain of, I think the framework is fine. I'm good with the framework. Now it's the, okay, so who's going to do what? Yeah, who's going to do what? I want to be very clear on that, because if let's put a little pressure on ourselves. If our goal is to debut this thing, all right, at John's 2024 conference, we got to get it done. All right. And so and in my brain, and when I think about what it looks, oh, John, pass back to you.
Just to interject here, I'm not the only one who has control over that. So
oh, that's fine. No, but you're in conference season. So if not
plenty of opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. So if not you, but it gives us that's conference season. Okay. Next October. Yeah, good grief. There's more than enough places. But so let us not put John on the hot seat. We will say this has to be done, quite frankly, by September. All right. So that we can be deploying it in a wide manner. And I do want us to think about with this September target is, so what is it? It's definitely something that's printed. I also think it's a beautiful narrative that if I want you to think about while we're together in May, what could be recorded? How could we make a recording while you're all together? That can be a nice little use of our time in May. So let's think about that. It could take a form of a podcast. So I want us to think of the many different ways we can show how this could be. All right. And that could be now in that vein. While the Rachel, Avery, the 3 A's, by then, Rachel's already a podmeister, but so she could be in coordinating the various podcasts that could be going on. So I want us to think about the multi-channels that we should be optimizing when we're together and in a position to do that. Michael, hand up.
Yeah, so 2 things. One, I would like to jump in and if I need to own a certain piece of this or collaborate, so the kids that count me in on this, of course. The second part is I'm thinking where I could offer strength on the connecting. Like, I know that we have targeted partners. I'm looking at the framework, and I'm seeing other foundations, PSOs, sector at large. If we're still I guess my question is, though, by September, if I'm working with whoever else is on board, whether it's Abby or whoever says I'd like to also, developing a timeline, which I could do as well, of what we want to do by when, and then the gathering of the or the communicating part of who needs to get in this, and is I don't know if Stacy's gonna be, but helping with that as well. I'd be happy to offer there. Also, I'd be happy to help in something that I didn't just think of right now that someone else says, but I need to hear what you think.
Okay. John?
I couldn't find my mouse cursor and I couldn't unmute. That was, technology is, we should know this by now, right? A couple of thoughts, Michael. I agree. In the same vein, I feel the same way. I have very limited capacity in certain pockets of the year right now. Right, next week is one of them. So a timeline that's conducive to that is helpful, so I can manage my time well and be impactful in this way. And I'd like to give some thought. We don't have to do it here at this time, but I want to put it in the universe to give some thought to who are the foundations that we're targeting. Do we want to have a certain swath at different asset sizes, at different staff sizes, at different configurations? How deep are we going? Those are some of the questions that I have. I think this framework is outstanding, Abby, and it gives a lot of really good, this is what we're going to do. I just want to know what the mechanism for getting that information is going to be.
Hannah has thoughts, and then Abby has thoughts.
Well, so my thought was along the lines of kind of like phase 1 and 2, maybe project wise, because when I read the framework, the first thing that I think is, how do we mine ourselves for all of this information before we go external, so that we have a chance to develop and then adjust interview questions, or if we want to do some sort of survey, or however, because I think between the 6 of us, or however many, there is plenty of experience and information. And then once we gather that, like, would it be interesting to do it by asset size, or is it more interesting to do it by like region of the country? Because like in the Southeast, specifically kind of like the Carolinas, Georgia, that sort of area, like practices are really different than in other parts of the country. And so like I feel like if we mined ourselves first, then when we got to that second phase, we'd have a better idea of how to approach it.
John, comment. Wait, I think Abby's next, then John.
I was just going to say, I actually think we should, and John, weigh in on this because you work for one, but should start with the PSOs before targeting individual foundations, just because I think they're a wealth of knowledge, and they're the one, they have job boards that, foundations post on and everything. So I think, and that gives us a little bit more of a higher level organization that I agree with Hannah. I think we have to I don't know if it's doing like a recording session of each one of us just like sitting down and going through all of our experiences with it. I don't, if it's writing all of it down at first and then kind of like pulling what is helpful. But I personally think we should start higher level and then, talk to the PSOs who we have relationships with. And then, if it's helpful, then go to some of, more individual foundations.
Back to John.
Abby, I certainly agree with that as a strategy. I think one thing to keep in mind, yes, most PSOs have a job board. Also, most PSOs are not intricately involved in the hiring process themselves. So it's a little bit of a misnomer of what kind of information we'll be able to get from any particular PSO. We can certainly mine job descriptions that are posted on PSOs, and that will yield a lot of information. All right, but that's also a long-term task to be able to keep up with that. You're absolutely right, Hannah. We have a wealth of experience, good and bad, on this screen. And what came to mind, I don't know if it's podcast or just for an information for how we kind of store our own internal knowledge on this before we move it in, but a kind of, we love it when people do this, we hate it when people do this, that kind of juxtaposed category. Because I've seen some things from communication wise that were really excellent, and some that are like, oh, by the way, you should probably respond to people when they apply. Everything in between.
So can I take it? I want to do a little summary to keep moving us around. I think the concept of smallifying this is important. And that smallifying is, let's stick in our own experience that the 6 of you hit five of five. Well, how many? 4, 3, 4.
7 with Connor.
With 7 with, nope, 6, because Rachel would not be in the mix on the going through the, so it's 5, I think, right? I don't know. Rachel, what number are you? 6. All right. Thank you. All right, good. All right. So, so we've got 6 fellows who will be part of the knowledge of making this happen. Okay. So I do think we need to mine what you all know. So I want to keep that on the poster. The idea of working with PSOs and however we decide to work, you've got a couple of really cool things that can happen. One is letting PSOs know you are doing this, even though they don't hire, but planting the seed about why are you doing this and how could it benefit your members. You've already are on their radar screen about, whoa, I might have something I could offer my members out of this. Then you've got the whole opportunity to mine their job boards and so you've got a source of information, but an early opportunity to plant the seed. We've got a gift to give to you someday. All right. So I think that is a good thing. So can we back up a little bit? And Michael talking about, we need a timetable of what we're going to do between here and there. Okay. We need a timetable. So I would like you to figure out who wants to be how do we do a brain dump from the fellows who have already launched or are launching? So somebody's got to be in charge of that. Hannah, thoughts?
So I know it's a little bit more time consuming, but I feel like we get a lot more interesting information out of each other when we do it conversation style. So, I mean, Zoom interviews, obviously, since we're all over the place, but we could do it like buddy system, like everybody has a buddy and you schedule time, 1 or 2, or however many you need sessions to say, like, here's the 4 basic questions, like best experience you've ever had, worst experience you've ever had, why it's crazy, and I don't know, some other, whatever question we all agree, but that way we could start there and then have a data mine to work from to shape.
Abby?
I would do that. And then I do feel like there's enough content that I wonder if even just like, I don't know, an individual brain dump of somebody of, maybe you're doing 4 basic questions with a partner and that sparks more ideas, but I feel like there's so much that I just wonder how long that would take if everyone listed this bad thing happened, this bad thing happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. So I just wonder if it's like a both and, where there's some kind of like a buddy system for recording. And then I don't know if it's a Google Doc where everybody just like sits down at some point and just, or whatever, if it just suddenly comes to you, like sit down and write down whatever happened to you. And so that way it's a little more spontaneous and as well. So I just wonder if there's, a combination of both of those that would be helpful.
Kelly, and then John.
I would agree with that. I think definitely the conversational piece. I really like the idea of this narrative too, just kind of writing out your own thoughts. And then if it's an intro and it turns into kind of that bullet point, like the key learnings or something, or the key themes that came out of it, regardless if they're good or bad or indifferent or just suggestions, kind of that bullet piece thing. And then that can really kind of carry throughout into this final product piece if there's like those bullet points. And I think combining all of those key themes into that. But yes, I agree, some sort of conversational piece that is recorded, but also that narrative that each of us writes in our own time and we can go back to.
John, thoughts?
I agree, Kelly, that narrative. I think that's also the basis for a potential conference session, is what would come out of that narrative. And I think my mind is organizing it and like, these are really great practices. These are not so great practices that you should think about. But I think one thing that would be helpful, just from my perspective, I can't speak to everybody else, but Kelly, while you're going through this in real time, when you put some things in there, that's going to spark memories for me and be like, oh yeah, and this thing. And that's going to help me kind of stay on task with this. Because if I just think about the whole experience in total, I don't know that I'm going to capture everything that I would want to capture. It'll be a lot, but we've all been through a lot of these different scenarios. So we want to make sure we get the best nuggets that we can.
All right, so Abby, I'm going to ask you if you would do this logistical thing because you're good at keeping us on task. I would like to recommend that you start with your own personal narrative, okay, about what you remember through the whole hiring process. And Abby will create your Google Doc for you each to submit your narrative to by a date that we will decide. Then go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I'll create a folder. Each person can have their own file. And then whatever recordings we do with one another, we can also plop in there easily.
Okay, so excellent. All right, so let us be thinking about timetable here because of your workloads. So then your job is to do your own personal narrative that'll go into your file. Then I actually am going to, in Zoom, this recording definitely goes into because it'll spark things. Then I am going to assign who the buddies are because I want you to buddy with someone you did not work with. All right, because I think there's a fresher perspective there. And your job before you do your buddy Zoom is to read each other's narratives. You can read them all if you want to, but then have your buddy discussion about what are high level themes that we want to make sure come out of it with the nugget of narrative is what's going to make it interesting. Okay, so you would do that with your buddies. So as I'm thinking about who should buddy up with who, all right, in terms of not working with anyone previously, I'm thinking that Michael Zimmer, I'm going to actually go, I don't think this will work. So everybody help me on who didn't work with who that they could be a buddy of. So I'm going to go with Michael Z. Abby, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you'd have to have me with Connor because we had the least amount of crossover. It was, I mean, 2 days, which doesn't really count.
Okay, good. All right. So Abby's going to be who's recording this. Abby, you're in charge of this.
Yes,
Abby,
I'm writing it.
Are the buddies. All right. So is that who else hasn't worked with another person?
The only option for me is Kelly.
Okay, the only option.
I love you, Kelly. I didn't mean it like that.
Okay, but Kelly, and that means that Michael Z and Hannah are going to be the buddies.
That
okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
All right. So
We had
you
one
two.
day of working together.
Okay, yes, so that's not a great in-depth. All right. So I think if we keep it in the smallify section right now, that is a lot of work that we're asking you to do. All right. So then the thing that has to be is, okay, now we have all this juicy stuff, how do we now synthesize it? But I don't want to arrive with that answer until you go through these next steps. So let's think about timetable. How long do you need to do your individual brain dumps? John?
Question, help me process. When we say narrative, are we thinking blog? Are we thinking report? Are we thinking brainstorm bullets? How do we want that to look? Does it matter?
Anyone have any thoughts on your best way you think this would be for your narrative?
I think just brain dump, however best you brain dump. So if
Cool.
that's bullets, and then whomever is working on like combining or like distilling all of this can go through and put it into one format. But however you best brain dump, that's how I would do it.
Is everybody okay with the free form? That you're not doing a doctoral thesis at this point. You're just really, I would suggest also kind of if you could go back through your calendar of the time frame that you were doing this, you'll have some lovely little things that spark when you notice who you interviewed with who, or as Hannah likes to have recorded, she thinks she has been turned down by the most places in the history of the TPF Fellow Program. So she may actually have her numbers of, so somebody try and exceed this many turned down. See if you can do it, okay? So, but anyway, however it is that it sparks memories for you, we want to make, this is a good posterity thing that you're doing. All right, so I'm back, Hannah?
Well, so I would say for me, like if we aimed maybe for Labor Day for the brain dump, just because everyone's got a lot going on over the next 2.5 weeks. That would work well for me. And then I had a thought that kind of sprang out of the back of my brain. So since y'all went through the Lilly program, I'm sure you had a point where you talked about like the taboo-ness of talking about money. And for me, I feel like hiring practices is like the taboo subject of the philanthropic sector. And so as we go through this project, maybe just keeping that in mind of like, what would, like if somebody invited you to talk about this and then they were like, whoa, why did you say that out loud? Like just being prepared for that, I guess, as we go into it. Because I feel like I've asked a couple of questions in the past, people have been like, you don't need to know that. And I've been like, well, you just like ruined my life again. So I'd like to know about that. But yeah.
Well, so I have to smile because these are interesting taglines, title of project. Okay. It's kind of like, I don't know, what are those? There was something about things you wanted to know about sex, but were afraid to ask, or there was some series about that. And so this can be the taboo of blah, 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 whatever. Okay. So, okay. So, yes. So keep in mind, this is where your words, you don't know what you're going to spark with others. So the question at the moment is, do you all have enough time to do your brain dump by Labor Day? That's the question of the moment. Anybody not? And what day is that? Let us have Abby. She likes dates.
It's
Abby, what day?
September, Labor Day, that Monday is September 4th.
Okay, so by September 5th.
John,
I can't.
Okay, so when
I
can
might,
you?
I might be able to do it literally on Labor Day. So I can try to do that, but that's where, like, I have 2 major Lilly proposals and a couple other things due right before Labor Day. So that's
All
where
right, so we're gonna,
needs to
what's
be.
the Friday of that next week?
I
Abby?
could do it by the 8th for sure.
the 8th, yeah.
Okay, so September 8th,
Yeah, I
you
can
must
do it by.
complete your narrative, all right?
Yep.
Then if by September 8th is your narrative, you can all work together with your buddy to at least get on the calendar when you're gonna do your buddy Zoom. All right, and so we would like all buddy Zooms completed by September 30th. Is that fair? All buddy Zooms must be done by September 30th. Okay. All right. Then we need to go, so then what do we do? All right, so you have to be thinking about then what do you do? So we can either decide that now, we got 5 minutes left, or you can be thinking about then what? What's preferences or early thoughts on this? John?
Are you, so for a then what perspective, are you thinking of then what, where we come together like this and talk through what we gleaned from that experience and how it might go from there?
Yeah, so I'm into the, okay, because we've now got all this juicy stuff.
Yeah,
How do we segment it?
yeah.
Got to
So
be
I just
thinking
wanted to
about how do
kind of-
we segment it?
Mhm,
And then we don't have to get into, but I mean, you'll get themes
mhm.
out of it. So you will all have, and then we'll pull together the themes. And then what do we do with it from there?
Might I suggest a Zoom in the latter half of October, somewhere after the Monday, the 16th to the end of the month would be ideal for me.
Okay, all right, okay, so again, you all have your calendars. So think about when you want to do it. Rachel, I'm in the time is the non-renewable resource. I don't think this is the best use of your time at this because we're into the logistics of pulling it together. We will include you at the right time when we do forward. So we're glad you're here today, but I don't think it's good use of your time because you're not zooming and capturing. Okay. Okay. All right. When is the October whatever? Are you okay that I participate? Okay. Hey, you know what? Kelly still works for me, quote, works for me, not for me, but for the Patterson Foundation. The rest of you can tell me just exactly what you think. All right.
I actually think a doodle poll would be helpful just because that's how I coordinate
Right.
my schedule. And if we're able to do that, I think that would be great.
Yeah.
So Debra, do you want me to have should I have Stacy send dates in the fine? Okay, for you. Okay.
Yep.
I'll reach out and ask her to do that the last couple weeks of October.
To
I
throw
will
it up,
say-
Fridays are really good for me.
Same.
That's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I was gonna say Thursdays and Fridays in October work best for me too.
Fridays work really well for me, from what
All
I
right,
understand.
I'll try to have her focus on Fridays and
Thank
we
you.
can go, and if we don't find one, then we can revert
I
and
would just
see what
just
works.
ask her to do Fridays in the end of October and November.
Okay,
Okay,
Yeah.
just to
Okay.
be safe, just
Yeah.
so then you don't have to do two. Okay. And I would like to say, if Rachel is in launch phase, we pop her back into the conversation as soon as she's launching. Okay. All right. So it's just a use of time that I want to be sure we're sensitive to.
I
Okay.
am wondering if an hour is enough for that to go through those narratives. I'm not sure it is.
Well, I see a lot of 2-hour requests
That's
that
what
then
I'm,
we can end early. Okay, if we get a lot done.
perfect.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to circle the room right now and see what your emotions are about how TPF Beyond is flowing today. Any reflections on what we're doing together? Any reflections? So we'll start with anyone who raises their hand. Okay, Hannah's going to go first.
I feel like this is, John, stop laughing. If anybody else raised their hand, they could go first.
Some things never change. Just start it.
yeah.
It's fine.
For me, I think this is like one small manifestation of what I hoped TPF Beyond could be. Something to bring us back, but still moving forward.
All right, John?
Yeah, I love being on this screen with all of you. It really just makes a big difference for me. And I think this is a good use of our time and our learnings as we continue to grow throughout the field. So I'm very appreciative of this. I think TPF Beyond is going to look a lot different with whoever's on the screen in the room at the time, right, over the years. But I think this is a really good start.
Okay, and then we're going, whose hands up next? Okay, Kelly?
I'll just echo, and when we were all together in February, I didn't really know what TPF Beyond could be capable of, but we kind of started having that conversation about what the gassiness looked like of what we could do together. And so that, I mean, that just enthusiasm has been building for this day specifically to kind of not only all get together in the room, but have a project that we can all do together. So I think, you know, it could have been anything, but to do this project specifically, I think is really meaningful. The perspective sharings that I've been having with, you know, kind of saying that, oh, we're, you know, kind of looking at this, and everyone gets really excited about it and is like, well, what, you know, what's that product going to look like? What is that going to turn into? So I think it's meaningful for us, but I think it's also going to turn into something that's meaningful for others and kind of allow that outlook. So great to see you all too.
Okay. Michael?
I'm absolutely thrilled that we're all gonna work on this together. I echo everyone's thoughts on coming back together and thinking about the beyond together as well. I think that it's nice that we can, you know, hold space for both of those and have that be our point of reconnection. And in addition to that, looking at the framework that we all just worked on with Abby, I'm super excited about where we're going with this, because I also know that it's not just us, and especially as a fellow who just walked through this process, you know, I just feel that this will be valuable. It will be invaluable to others as they learn about best practices. And even, I mean, I started to think about this, wow, could we have fun? Like this could be a skit. This could be like, you know, we could just open it up with, oh, hi, Michael Zimmerman. So come, let's join. And we have like a Zoom screen on a stage at a comp. Like, I don't know. I just feel like we could have so much fun with this, and there will be humor injected into how we do this, but also driving home a really important point about, well, what do we want the sector to look like when it comes to hiring practices? So I'm thrilled that we're doing this right now.
And Abby?
I'll just say, I don't have anything substantive to add, just to echo everybody else and say ditto. It's exciting, and I'm excited to see where it goes after this.
Okay, and Rachel, thoughts as you're entering this conversation?
I think it'll be really helpful for me when I start to launch, just knowing how long each fellow has stayed past their 1 year for varying reasons and the challenges and things that they faced. I think it's going to be, I think something's going to come out of this project to make launching more successful and more intentional for future fellows. So I'm looking forward to it.
So I want to talk about something. I think I got it from Michael. It sparked in me. What is the I've got two things happening here. One is the project, and that's the 6 of you who are working on the project. The other is the we have 10 fellows now, and I want to, since the 10 fellows are now not going to get together until May, I want to also be thinking about what I want to do with the 10 between now and May. So I want you to know that I'm thinking about that. So if you have any thoughts, just shoot me an email on that. We don't need to discuss that now. Okay. All right. Okay. John, that's a thumbs up. Got it. Okay, great. Yes.
I do have one quick thing for you though. If you have somebody that is interested in community voice and like stakeholder engagement in a meaningful way, that is coming up that Tuesday, October 10th. If you want to send somebody, they might get some value out of that.
Yeah, I saw that in the chat, so I cut that, and people can do it, can go from there. So thank you very much. That's part of the learning and sharing that we can do. All right. Okay. Thank you all very much, and have a wonderful day, and we'll stay connected. Okay. Bye-bye. Didn't Stacy tell you? No, it's not your bad. It's this is how it starts. So time's available, but it's just not today. All right. So you're not going to do anything. You're not going to send our report. Okay. So I will get back. Okay. sorry. Or you don't, you're just gonna say a swear word in the car. Okay. All right, thank you. oh, forgot to do this. And